Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today is Tuesday, May the 16th, and we have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Ruben of FCT. Ruben is here today to talk to us about title insurance, what it is, what does it cover, why do you need it, why is it important, all of those wonderful things. As well, we're going to be going live on our Facebook account. So Facebook world, hello out there. If you're watching us on YouTube later, hello YouTube world. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more future webinars. As well, if you're listening to us on our podcast, Maxwell Devonshire Realty, click and follow so you get up to date with all of the content available. All right, everyone, if you're watching either live or on Facebook, I will be monitoring the question section. So please use the Q&A piece below. I will then be asking it. If you use the chat function, I'll be watching that as well. But at the very end, we will open it up for questions. So write yours in. If they get covered while he's presenting, that's great. If not, we'll answer it at the end and maybe even give you an opportunity to chat. But anyways, Ruben, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will be covering some basics of title insurance. I love having conversations with realtors because you spend the most time with clients, and so it's important for you to be involved in the conversation. We're, like Alex said, we're going to be talking about things that what is title insurance, what it does, what it doesn't do, dispel some myths, some misconceptions, and hopefully clear up some, provide you some information that that encourages you to talk about title insurance with your clients, and use me as a resource going forward in the event that you need something or have a question, you have a question about a specific file or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and so basically, the little bit about FCT, we're actually the largest title insurer in the country. We pioneered title insurance back in '91. We brought it to Canada, and I'm going to be giving you some examples of what title insurance is, and some things that that you don't know about, the things that coverage is, and some of the things that we're going to get into some coverage, some claim examples, some things we would have paid had there been title insurance on a file, and things like that. And by all means, have your questions, and love to answer them. So we'll do a bit of an introduction. Myself, I look after Northern Alberta and for FCT, and like I said, we are the largest title insurer in the country, and we're the pioneers. Key features of title insurance, we'll talk a little bit about the benefits, the coverages, like I said, and how you can use that as a tool for your business. And one of the reasons why we brought title insurance to Canada was to make transactions simple and secure. That is as basic as it gets. We wanted to make sure that that the client was protected, but also to protect you and the lawyer as well in the transaction. Some of the key features of title insurance. It's a policy that arises, that covers losses arising from issues that existed at the date of the policy. So when you see a typical insurance that covers you for things that might happen in the future, title insurance covers you for things that have happened in the past. There are some things that are covered post-policy, things like fraud, and things like that. Things that are covered, title issues. There's three different components: title issues like defects, encumbrances, liens; off-title issues like lack of legal access, lack of building permits, incorrect responses to search inquiries, things like that.
Hi, Ruben.
Hi.
Are you sharing your screen?
Give me a second here.
Oh, because I thought you said you're sharing your screen, but then we're only seeing you. So I wanted to make sure.
Oh, you are? Okay. Okay, here. There, let's do that. How's that?
Yeah, now we can see it. You're good.
Perfect. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about benefits of title insurance coverages, a tool for realtors, how you can use it in your business. We brought title insurance to Canada to make transactions simple and secure, as I said before. And some of the key features of title insurance, as I mentioned, for things, typically insurance is for things that have happened that will happen in the future. This is for things that have happened in the past. title issues, off-title issues, transactional issues like title, like fraud and RPR issues that are covered as well. And something that's very important for a component of title insurance is the duty to defend. What this means is that we'll pay the legal costs associated with defending that title for the insured. This is over and above the value of the policy. And we've seen costs anywhere from a couple of $1,000s in upwards of $13,000, $15,000, $20,000 in legal fees to defend that title for the insured. So those costs can get quite high, and the duty to defend allows for coverage of that, and it doesn't detract from the value of the policy. Okay. It's important to note that there's two types of policies. There's a lender policy and a homeowner policy. The reason why that's important is because you may hear somebody saying, "Oh, there's already title insurance on this policy, on this file. You don't need it." Most likely, that's a lender policy. In Alberta, 85% of lenders are mandating title insurance. It's not a matter of if, it's when they will all mandate it. And only about 30% of homeowners actually get title insurance protection for themselves. So we're nowhere near where we need to be in terms of education. And make no mistakes, your clients are getting more educated. 5 years ago, the words title insurance, what does title insurance do, and Title Insurance Canada were Googled 900 times a month. Today, it's 11,000 times a month. And so you hear a lot of stories out of the US and commercials and things like that. And so that has piqued the interest of consumers. And so they're doing more research about how that applies to Canada. So keep in mind, there is two types of policies. The purchaser always pays for the lender policy. They're paying for it regardless. And it's just a matter of adding the homeowner policy to that. So make sure that when you talk to your clients that they talk to their lawyer to make sure that they get a homeowner policy as well, and to clarify that, to make sure that there's no misunderstandings. Okay, there's some features of it. One-time premium. So for a property between $200,000 and $500,000, it's $179 for the first policy, which typically is the lender policy, and then it's $50 to add the homeowner policy to that. So for a total of about $229. Anything over $500,000 is $1 per thousand on the overage. So if it's a $600,000 property, it's an extra $100. So that's kind of the way that you can do the math. There is no deductible except for fence encroachments in Alberta. It's a $500 deductible. It's a no-fault claims process. And what this means is very important for you to know is that we don't go on a witch hunt. If you have an obligation to your clients to ask the questions, if a question has been asked and answered, you have fulfilled your obligation to the client. It is not your job to go investigate. The moment you start uncovering things, investigating and uncovering things, those could potentially become exclusions in the policy. So as long as the question has been asked and answered, do you know if there's any permits or permits for this finished basement or the deck or whatever? And if the seller says, I don't know, then you have answered the question, and that fulfills your obligation. And protection for as long as the owner owns the property, and as well as a duty to defend. So if they sell the property, then they need to get a different policy when they go to a different home. Okay, so they're very straightforward. Many questions I hear. I talk to lawyers all the time, and what I hear very commonly is, I have a good RPR, so I don't need title insurance. That's one of the myths. You don't need title insurance. Sorry, you don't need an RPR to get title insurance. And we don't. If a client does want an RPR and title insurance, I mean, that's always better. Remember that the RPR is a good document, but it's limited in its scope in that it only deals with the outside of the property. And there's no recourse. In the event that something comes, the RPR discovers something, then what do? Okay, you risk the deal, you potentially now have to go back and negotiate. But with title insurance, there is recourse. And I've talked to surveyors that say that about 30% of the surveys are done wrong, just human error. Okay, inspection reports, I hear that as well. And, inspection reports, again, they're valuable documents, but inspectors don't punch holes in walls. Nobody knows what's going on behind those walls, and it's really the unknowns that are going to, cause problems in the future. The other thing is we do have condo coverage. There's a myth, some misconceptions that title insurance does not cover condos. We do. We'll talk a little bit about that, as well as new home construction. Okay. Some of the things that we talk about with condo coverage is related to things like special assessments. So if a special assessment was ratified by the condo board, but it was not documented, we'll pay for that special assessment because it was an unknown issue. Okay, and that takes us into a little bit of a chat about known versus unknown issues. So the best way I can describe it to you is an unknown issue is your friend. If the insured didn't know that there was an issue, and then a few years later something comes up where there's an enforcement letter for the municipality saying that they need to rectify something, those are the kind of things that would be covered. And again, just so you know, what triggers the policy is an enforcement letter from the municipality. And the reason why that's important is because we've had lawyers that call and say, look, we know this is an issue, we know it's a claim, but the city's dragging their feet. Can you call them and do something? Tell them to hurry up. We don't do that. It needs to be triggered by an enforcement letter. In the case of an encroachment, it can be triggered by a neighbor saying you're whatever's encroaching on my property. That would trigger the policy as well. Okay, and so when it comes to RPRs, only about 5% in Alberta, only about 5% of our claims are RPR related. 75% of our claims are actually related to permits, lack of permits. That's where we're paying most of the claims. And you should know that Alberta is the second riskiest province for us, not only in terms of the number of claims we pay, but also the dollar amounts. Second only to Ontario. And a lawyer says I have a good, I do my searches, I do my due diligence, and I have a good RPR. That's all the client needs. 2/3 of our claims in Alberta fall outside of legal opinion, meaning that it's irrelevant based on the claims we pay. It's irrelevant what the lawyer didn't find and what his legal opinion is. Those are the type of things that come up, and the claims that we pay fall outside of that. So it's not necessarily based on legal opinion or on RPR. It has to do on things like lack of building permits and things like that may not be found, and that the city might not provide the right information. And so those are the kind of things that we'll see claims on. Okay, I've known versus unknown issues. Again, just because something is a known issue, it doesn't mean we won't cover it. We actually had a claim where there was a 30-year-old retaining wall encroaching on city property, 30 years old, and it was brought to us. We thought, well, it's a known issue for sure. We're going to decline it or exempt it from the policy. And we sent it to underwriting, and underwriting said, it's been 30 years. What are the odds that the city's going to do something about it now? We're in the risk business, so we took on that risk. So we can get pre-approvals for you if you're not sure. If you walk through a property and something's just giving you a bad feeling, send me all that documentation. If you're just not sure what if it's going to be an issue that's going to hold up the deal, or that that now it's known, you can send it to me. I can get you a pre-approval. And what the pre-approval does is it gives you peace of mind, knowing that you don't have to risk the deal. You don't have to go back and renegotiate, that you have assurances from us that in the event something goes wrong, that we will go ahead and cover that. And keep in mind that just because we may exclude something for the policy doesn't mean we won't issue a policy. It just means that one specific issue will be excluded. We will issue a policy for our coverage for everything else. Okay. And so that's important to know about known versus unknown issues. We've discussed the two types of policies. The other thing that you see in condo coverages is very typical, not only special assessments, but things like, a unit that's supposed to have 2 parking stalls, but only 1 is registered, things like that. Those are the kind of things that, we would pay the legal fees to have that rectified and have that title brought under registration as well. So, or a storage unit, or things like that. And that's typically what you will see with new home construction. We actually offer 1 year from the date of possession for things that are seasonal. Say something was delayed, a deck or a driveway or an HC unit, things like that. we would offer 1 year from the date of possession. And some of the things that we will see is driveways built encroaching on right of ways, decks built without permits, because the builder doesn't know the contractor didn't get the or the subcontractor didn't get permits for that. We actually had a claim in Calgary where there was an HC unit that was the way the house was positioned, it was and where it was on along the side of the house, it was actually encroaching on a neighbor's property. So we actually paid the $3,500 to have that HC unit moved back. Okay, and when you think about that, you know, people are buying their home, they have a little bit of money saved up for maybe furniture, landscaping, fencing. Nobody got $3,500 to have to fix something that they didn't even know was an issue. You know, so those are some of the things that we see pop up. It's not the you know, there's a false sense of security where lawyers and realtors get into a thing where lawyers say, you know, I have my legal opinion in the RPR and everything's fine, but there's still exposure there. Our average claim pops up after 5 to 7 years, so it doesn't happen right away. And coincidentally, that's about how long people stay in the home before they decide to sell it and move on. And so typically that's when we will see issues. So in the event that you know, that the insured is selling the home and that's when an issue is uncovered, just because it's uncovered, it doesn't mean that they're suffering a loss. It's kind of like when you get into a car accident. You don't suffer a loss when you get into a car accident, you suffer a loss when you go fix it. And it's the same thing. If nobody's forcing the sellers to remedy the situation, then they're not suffering a loss. So what we do in those types of cases is we tell the buyer that if they get a policy with us, we will offer something called limited liability force removal endorsement, which means that because nobody's forcing them to fix something, but obviously it is an issue, we'll put it in the policy that in the event in the future, the municipality, the city offers gives them an enforcement letter to fix it, we will take care of it at the time. They can choose that, or if it's something that they need remedied right now, again, if the policy is not being triggered, there's really not much that we can do other than offer that endorsement to protect them in the future. Okay, so that's a very important point about title insurance. And it's not always, I mean, in terms of claims, it's not always the obvious of fixing an issue. The whole point of title insurance is to make the insured financially whole. So we've seen claims such as an addition to the home. And turns out the municipality comes out and says you're not supposed to have this addition was built wrong or whatever it is. And so we actually had a claim where we engineer we commissioned an engineer's report that the engineer looked at it and said that you can't have an addition in this home. You pretty much have to tear it down. So we paid not only the cost to have that remedied and have that torn down, but we also compensated the homeowner for the loss of property value. And so it's not always just about rectifying that, removing that addition and the construction costs associated with that, but also for the loss of property value, because it would not be financially whole just having that repair or that removal of the addition. So those are the kind of things that I wanted to share with you. That is not always the obvious. And we've seen claims, we've seen things that we would have covered. In BC, there was a condo unit that was, you know, these people bought it. 6 years later, they go sell it. And it turns out that the owner, the previous owner, had actually done plumbing work to the unit that wasn't sanctioned by the building. And it was actually affecting the entire building. And so those new owners were actually responsible, the sellers were actually responsible for fixing that. Had they had title insurance in place, we would have paid that claim because it was an unknown issue. So, you know, my job is to make sure that I talk to lawyers and realtors and make sure that they have enough understanding to encourage their clients to get title insurance. I mean, only 30% of homeowners are getting title insurance, so we're nowhere near where we need to be. And so it's important to make sure that everybody's having that conversation and that you're encouraging your clients to get a policy. And FCT actually has the most comprehensive coverage. We have 33 points of coverage on our policy. And when we issue a policy, we issue it for everything. unless there's exclusions, where in the market some of the processes for other insurers is that the lawyer actually has to check off the individual endorsement that they want. We don't think that's right, and we believe that's dangerous, because what are the odds that the one endorsement you don't check off is the one that comes back and blows up in your face? And so when we issue a policy, we issue it for everything. And I will send Alex a copy of the policy. You can see all the coverages that are included, as well as some other information about new home construction, condo coverages, and things like that. Another thing that there's a myth out there is that title insurance does not pay construction liens. There are cases in which we do. In the event that, again, if it's an unknown issue, so if the lawyer does his searches, title search, and nothing comes up, but as you know, land titles is running 17 weeks behind. And so when the lawyer does his searches, and then after he does his searches, a lien is registered on the property, and that wasn't caught, well, that's an unknown issue. We'll pay that lien. So in that event, those are the kind of things that we will cover, those construction liens in that case. Okay, so we've talked about two types of policies: lender, homeowner policy. And that the lender can't force a homeowner to get a homeowner policy because they're not allowed to mandate third-party insurance. And remember that the purchaser hears about 7 types of insurance. And so just because you tell them, do you know about title insurance? And they go, yeah, I do. Well, their eyes gloss over when you give them so many things, types of insurance that they have to get. And so it's important to make sure that you have that discussion, but even more than that, to make sure that that they don't end up with a lawyer that doesn't believe in title insurance and maybe tries to talk them out of it. Because does that happen? Doesn't mean it's a bad lawyer. It's just they're not fully aware of all the benefits of it, and so sometimes that tends to happen. And so it's important to note that there's 2 types of those policies: known versus unknown issues. Let me know to get pre-approvals for you. And talk about condo coverage, new home construction. One of the best things that I love doing with these types of interactions is talking about some specific file that you may be dealing with, or any questions that you have on that, and I'd love to answer those based on the information that we've covered so far.
Yeah, so we do have a couple of questions. One is, are all title insurance companies the same, and do they cost the same amount?
The coverages tend to be overall about the same. Like I said, we do have the most comprehensive coverage. The difference between FCT and the other competitors is that we are owned by a parent company, First American Title, but we're actually a separate insurance entity, meaning that we have our own Canadian insurance license, and also means that we're actually regulated by OSFI, who regulates the banks. I'm not sure if you know who OSFI is the Office of the Superintendent for Financial Institutions. And because Canadian laws are more stringent, we're actually required to have 3 to 4 times more reserves to pay claims than our competitors do. And so, we're more capable of paying claims than our competitors because we're required to have so much more than they do. Not only that, but our competitors are limited to the products that they offer in their home country. They can't offer new products in Canada. We can. And so we've come out with new innovative things to offer lawyers to protect them. And we have that flexibility to be able to do that. So that's one of the differences. I've also mentioned before about some of the things, some of the other differences would include things like because we're the pioneers of title insurance, whenever we pay claims, it proves our point that title insurance is needed. The American model tends to be to litigate to mitigate costs. And so we have seen competitors go after previous owners to recoup costs on claims, things like that. We obviously don't believe in that. And so there are some significant differences in how we operate. And we do want to pay claims because we're the pioneers and because we're nowhere near where we need to be. We believe that paying claims proves our point of what we're trying to do. So those are some of the differences. That's a great question.
Okay. The next question: if a lack of permits is discovered after closing, will title insurance cover the cost to obtain permits?
Yes, so just because there's no permits doesn't mean it was built wrong. So a lot of those times with those claims, we'll just pay out the cost of the permits. And after closing, I mean, typically that's after the date of the policy. So yeah, typically those are the kind of things, because it happened before, that we would cover those because it was unknown at the time.
Okay. Does title insurance cover when the city has sent a notice to repour sidewalks and is charging the homeowner to repour in the event the new home buyer wasn't notified prior to purchasing?
You know what? That would be a specific case that I would have to take to underwriting. It really depends on communication that happened prior, or if it's actually just a notification, or if it's actually an enforcement letter. That makes a difference. I've seen, and the reason why I mention that is because I've seen documentation that's been sent to us where it's more of a this is what's been found out, and just so you know, we're kind of working on this. That's not an enforcement letter. It literally, like, it has to say you have so many days to rectify the situation. And so it really depends, it's case by case on that particular case, what that would be. So I can certainly, if you have something like that pending, I can send it to me and I can send it to underwriting and see if something will recover.
Okay, and I'll put your contact information,
Yeah,
your
please.
email contact information in the comments on our YouTube when it gets uploaded. And the next question, we got a number of them, so I'm glad
That's
you're
great.
ready to fire.
Great.
This is good. What are the most common claims that title insurance does not cover?
So, I mentioned to you about special assessments. Typically, what we'll see, now remember, the condition to pay the special assessment if it was ratified but not documented. And typically what we'll see is, say, a condo board has a discussion about a special assessment, but they defer a decision for, say, a couple of months. Your client buys a condo in between that time. And then all of a sudden, after the fact, the condo board reconvenes and then ratifies the decision. Those are some of the claims that we have seen. But because it wasn't ratified before the policy date, it was actually afterwards, we would deny that claim. So that's something that we have seen. It's I can understand why, but again, that's why I emphasize it has to be ratified and not documented prior to the policy date.
Okay. You stated that inspectors don't punch holes in walls. What could be found behind the walls that title insurance would cover?
That's a great question. So I'll give you a perfect example. This was an example where another type of insurance brought it up against ours. We had a claim where there was a finished basement that was done. Electrical work had been done to the finished basement without the use of a certified electrician. House burnt down. They went to their fire insurance. The insurance company said, well, it was done by someone who was not certified, so we're not paying it. And so they brought it to us, and because it was an unknown issue at the time, they didn't know that the work had been done and it wasn't done by a certified electrician. We actually went ahead and covered that claim. It was an unknown issue, so we covered it. So those are some of the things that we would see.
Any other ones?
Yeah, you know what? There's a few more. I can't think of it at the moment, but I can. What I can do is I can send you a couple more examples of some of these things that we have seen, claims that we have paid with some of those specific issues.
How about Poly B? If the homeowner didn't know there was Poly B, and then there was a flood, would that be covered?
You know what? I'd have to double check. There have been some things that I want to make sure that nothing's changed. So I'll get information for you. I'll note that down and I'll ask just to make sure that I give you the right information.
Yeah, no, sounds good. All right, on to the next question. With regards to special assessment coverage, would the assessment not have to be noted in the meeting minutes for this to be covered? How would this not be known about in order to receive coverage?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, if it wasn't documented, that's exactly it. If it wasn't written in the minutes, and it was ratified and somebody just didn't write it down. And remember that the condo board is made up of condo owners, of the people who live in the building. So a lot of times they're not exactly experts in making sure that they cross their T's and dot their I's. And so some things may be missed. And this would be one of them where it wasn't documented. Nobody wrote it down in the minutes that they had ratified a special assessment. So that's how we would find it. And basically, we would look at the file and see what was documented. And it's very easy to verify that nothing was documented. We'll go ahead and pay the claim.
What is the average length of a claim from start to payout?
It really depends. That's a great question, but it really depends because they vary so much. Like I said, if it's just a matter of permits, we just go ahead and pay the permits. That's pretty quick. It could be as extensive as a couple of months. We actually had a claim in Winnipeg, pipes, frozen winter, small home. And we actually, city came out to take a look. Turned out that they found outstanding work orders that hadn't been completed. And they found deficiencies in the basement. So essentially we had to move the family out to do all those repairs, and that would took a couple of months. So it runs a whole gamut. It really depends.
Okay. I don't know, you might have to take this one away too, but when the seller offers title insurance in regards to a buyer getting title insurance on a unit and no special assessment indicated in the documents that were received, then in a couple years, there was a discovery of water damage behind stucco that has been leaking over a few years, and now there is a special assessment to the unit. Would they be covered?
The special assessment specifically, no, it wouldn't be covered because it's something that's done after the fact. And they would have to be something that a claim is related to title itself. Necessarily water damage might not be related to title, so that might not be something that would be covered because it's not related to the title itself.
Can a homeowner get title insurance at any point in their home ownership or only at the time of purchase?
No, that's a fantastic question. Yeah, you can certainly get it anytime. It is more expensive afterwards because at the time of the transaction, all those searches and all that investigation and that whole process is taken care of because of the sale transaction. But so it's more money later because we still have to do those things. But you can certainly do it. Actually, fct.ca, you can go and you can get a quote right online.
Nice. How do we know what title insurance company is being selected by the lawyer?
The lawyer it's a lot of times, so it's a combination. It could be that lender is mandating a certain, with a specific insurer. It could be that the lawyer has a preference, and you can certainly get the buyer to find out from the lawyer who they deal with in their office for coverage.
Okay. And if no permits are in place and you pay to get the permits, do you also cover the cost to do the work correctly if it wasn't correct in order to get the permit?
Yeah, so those are the things that we would take a look at. Like I said, sometimes it might be that there's no issues, but those would be some of the coverages that we would have because there were not known issues at the time. So yes, that's the kind of things that we would cover.
Okay. And if a claim is made on title insurance, does title insurance end or does it still exist until the homeowner sells in the long-term future?
Yeah, so the value of the policy is typically the purchase price of the home. So as long as they stay within that, the policy is in place. If it's a $500,000 home and it's a $500,000 policy, and we have claims that run up to that, then we're pretty much done with paying our claims on that policy.
Okay. And then does making a claim on one property affect their ability to get title insurance on another property?
No, that's a great question. No, I wouldn't because it's no fault of their own, right? It's not something that they caused. So no, we wouldn't look at that.
Okay. If a buyer agent did not ask about permits, would the buyer still be covered by title insurance?
Yeah, those are the type of questions that you would typically ask. I mean, I don't know that someone is not asking those questions. We certainly ask them when policy is being ordered, and so I haven't run into a situation where a realtor hasn't asked that. Typically, that's the type of information that is known, and we would find out whether there were any permits or anything on that property, and usually that's all we typically don't know, and so we would base it off of that. So again, it's a no-fault claims process, so we're not going to go on a witch hunt unless there's gross negligence. It's very difficult to for a realtor to go out of their way to have gross negligence in fulfilling their duties, and so that's typically not an issue that we see.
Would not the standard purchase contract where the seller is warranting that there's permits, or that they just don't know about permits,
Yeah,
that would suffice, I'm assuming.
it does. And, again, it's typically that answer is I don't know, right? I don't know, or yeah, we do have permits or whatever it is. But typically, if it's I don't know, then it's an unknown issue, right, to the insured.
And so then I guess that leads into the next one. If the seller lied about permits, would title insurance still cover the claim?
Well, again, we're looking at the insured and whether the insured knew or not. If that question was answered as a no, I don't know. Sorry, as a don't know, excuse me, and the insured didn't know, then we would pay out that claim.
Right. Yeah.
So it
So
wouldn't have anything to do with the seller. We're looking at the insured.
right. And in that case, if you needed to, that might be when you would go after the seller for negligence.
It would
In the
have to be a
States.
very specific case that we would look at that. So I can't say blanket we would, but it would have to be a specific case. Yeah.
Nope, totally fair. Any other questions? We've gone through the list. No, doesn't look like it. Put your hand up on the chat if you'd like, if you do have a question and you're just typing it in. All right, I am not seeing any hands. So that means, Ruben, thank you so much for joining us. I will be putting your contact information out on the YouTube as a comment. So if you do have questions, you can reach out to him directly. And as always, if you follow us on Facebook so you can get more of this live content as well, don't forget to hit subscribe on YouTube, LinkedIn, all of those other social media platforms, and subscribe to our podcast. Thank you so much, Ruben. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you guys. It's great to spend time with you guys. Take
See
care.
you.